So when we're finished with the 10 questions, when the candidate has had a chance to answer all those questions, we will take turns of board members asking any questions they would like. There's no suppression of any of the questions you would like to ask, as long as they're
He's
germane.
limiting it to my topics.
As long as they're germane.
All of my questions were
Trustee
germane.
Banducci, yes.
Well, I guess I have two things. One is we did a motion to amend the agenda. This is the amended agenda that I was given. Now, we're not following the sequence that's on the amended agenda. So either we're amending the agenda to what we were provided, and this is what we were given in advance, because I have the same copy that I printed off my email, or we're amending the agenda and then we have another agenda in order that I'm not aware of, because we jumped to item 6.
That's what I tried to do with point of order when you ran over me, sir.
So that's my first question. We seem to have just jumped through on the agenda, and if we're amending it, the next thing I had, even if you were trying to welcome the candidate letter, which again, we're not following the amended agenda that we just passed and seconded a motion for, there would have been established process for interviews action. So I'm confused how we ended up all the way down on item number 6 that quickly on the amended agenda. That's not the order of what I see. So that's my first thing. Secondly, to delay questions on the various topics for questions 1 through 10 to the very end of the process of asking questions will be very challenging in trying to keep the questions and the follow-up questions in context. There's going to be a chain of communication that's going to be going on. We're going to ask a question, they're going to give a response, we ask a follow-up question. Now what's going to happen is I may have something on question 3, and 45 minutes, an hour later, something like that, I'm going to circle all the way back to question 3 to ask a follow-up question. And quite frankly, I would bet that most of the folks in this room, much less the folks trying to watch this by Zoom, are going to remember what was being discussed in number 3 to try to keep that train of thought going so that the follow-on question makes sense in context. So to jump around after we do this and then go back, which is basically, I think, what John has proposed, is that we get through the 10 and then we're going to go back through the 10 in some random manner with follow-up questions. Depending on when we just address that topic, it could have been 5 minutes or 50 minutes of elapsed time since we'd had that conversation. So I don't think that's the best way to do that, to try to maintain the integrity of the question and the answers and the thought process that goes with it.
I appreciate your thoughts. Yes, Craig.
Well, Todd, if you look at what they're trying to do, that they're trying to shield future candidates, that makes perfect sense of what they're trying to do. Basically, they're changing the process halfway through this interview process to protect follow-on candidates. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me, and I find it very disingenuous about the community. Why don't we just vote on who you've already predetermined?
Are there any other discussion?
I do have one comment. Not quite to Greg's point, but quite frankly, there's a bigger issue here. And in fact, I saw several emails come in today to the Board of Trustees, and at least one was from someone off the search committee, which kind of caught me by surprise. Rather highly regarded individual, highly educated and involved in the education system. And she was surprised and didn't understand why we didn't go into executive session yesterday. And one of her queries, and I know John saw it for sure, was how can you be doing this in open session when any other candidate in theory could see it, or any of their friends or colleagues or anybody else, if anybody's trying to help them or advise them or prep them or maybe even doing a mock interview session for them. Well, anybody that went first, Dr. Brand, would be at a tremendous disadvantage from whoever gets to go last, which I think is Crumbaker now, or I think he always was. So I think that's still the elephant in the room, and I think you guys had some discussion on that yesterday, was what was the proper way to do a personnel action. And I know I posed the question before, and Pete, you told me I was right, and you told me that twice. So either it's the best practice or it's not. So I don't know. I don't know how you guys addressed it yesterday. I wasn't here. I haven't seen the tape, so I don't know how that all played out exactly. But somehow you guys addressed that. But I still think that's the elephant in the room, because we're doing some things here, and I question the process. So why are we in open session? We amended agenda, and we're not following the amended agenda that we were provided. And third, I think the sequence of questioning is suspect, and I think it's going to be more problematic than if we try to follow in a logical stream of question one, complete question one, go to question two, complete question two, go to question three. I'm also under the impression that you guys were here for a while yesterday. I don't know the exact time of that, but I know we have at least an hour and a half, but it sounds to me like you guys might have exceeded that substantially. So probably more important to get the questions answered and get through this. But
I would like to answer your first question, and that has to do with why this is not an executive session. I asked the president to ask all of the 5 trustees whether or not they would go into executive session. It takes 4 of us to do it. He only received 3 positive responses.
Actually, yesterday, the roll
Please
call
let
vote.
me finish. You've got to learn some manners, young man. We did not have 4 people that said they would go into executive session. Therefore, we could not go into executive session and had to do it in open session. You were one of the ones that did not respond. Greg did not respond.
Well, David, there's a flaw in that logic, if you don't mind me responding, Chair. We didn't respond, so I don't think that means that we've said yes, or we said no, or that we gave any indication. In fact, my understanding yesterday is that you actually could have had 4 votes. Of course, mine was irrelevant yesterday because I wasn't here. Again, that's a whole other question about ramming this through and scheduling it when I'm on duty in the military and I couldn't even be here. I won't be here for half the interviews just from that. So that's another sidebar issue if we really want to go down that road. But you had 4 people yesterday, and my understanding is that Greg voted to go into executive
I
session.
did.
Am I mistaken?
I did.
Well, hold on
Look
now,
at the
Greg.
roll call vote.
Hold on, I'm talking at your role.
Please let him finish and ask to speak.
I answered his
Please
question.
ask to speak. Are you finished, or do you have more?
No, I don't have anything more to say. I just, from my understanding, you guys might have had the 4 votes yesterday, but you still didn't do it. So, again, so there was a premise made. We got there. You guys did it, and it still didn't work out. So that's not on me either way. I wasn't here. So
To answer your agenda order, items number 1, 2, and 3 are finished. Number 4, I told you that I asked the candidate to wait to come in until we finished business. So that's why number 4 hasn't been done. Number 5, we just are taking care of, and then we'll move on to 6. So no, we're right on order except for that one item, and that item has been set aside so that the candidate's not here during our discussion of business.
well, I was kind of wondering about that with the order. Well, again, we have the established order, and I guess you're taking the chair prerogative that you're moving that item.
Thank you for allowing that.
I've been waiting for 5 minutes. Am I going to be ever recognized?
Yes, what would you like to say?
Okay. So this is a good example where I was going to say something and then was never recognized by you. And this is a good example where you're trying to stifle the questions, where even if I were to write them down and everything, the context of the informal conversation that we're supposed to have with these candidates, it's hard to capture in the moment questions and in the moment answers when they're familiar with what they just said, and when you can take what they just said and put it in a question that's specific to them. It's hard to say, oh yes, I did talk about that an hour ago, is what you guys are trying to do, and then put them in that same frame of mind. So you guys are trying to stifle our questions by this motion. So, and secondly, I would love to hear from our lawyer right now, who seems to not work for me, even though I'm on one of these board of trustees. Are you ever going to get me the emails that I asked for today, by the way? And then the second thing.
That's not germane to this discussion. Right?
Actually, it is. As part of the process, I have a follow-on motion after this. But the second thing is I would like to hear from our lawyer how we've already proven, thanks to Getty, that we can't go into executive session. How having all of these meetings in open session, we've been given privileged information that we're only allowed to consume in executive session, how we're able to make a final conclusion on candidates on June 22nd that you guys are so excited to do. I would love to hear from our lawyer how this is possible.
Trustee Wold,
Yes.
none of that is germane to this meeting. You have a pending motion and a second.
It definitely relates to the process, sir.
And Trustee McKenzie, I did discuss that with you yesterday. It doesn't need to be discussed again, and it's not part of this meeting.
That was before we failed to go into executive session. There was assumptions in that conversation, sir, that we were going to go into executive session on the 22nd. The search consultant even said that's where the deliberations were going to happen.
Again, that's not germane to the motion.
It is. It's part of establishing the process for interviews.
I would like to call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
David, you were still answering me, I thought, on the questions, sir.
Pardon?
I thought you were still answering what I had asked about the questions. Maybe I missed that. You had discussed it, and I think we got kind of segued there a little bit.
I think of your many questions, I gave you a couple answers.
Maybe I missed it in the midst of all this. Okay. I had suggested about the timing of the follow-up questions to concur with the discussion of the original questions. So follow-ups to one with one and that.
And I heard your concern.
Okay. Just think it'd be easier for the candidate.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Can we have a clarification of the motion?
John, do you want to clarify the motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My motion was to go through the pre-assigned questions with the candidate prior to asking any additional questions, but only limit the additional questions to any questions germane to the interview.
Thank you. So once again, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay. The motion carries 3-2. The next order of business has to do with the informal dinner meetings that were arranged by the president's office and.
No, arranged by you. I talked to the president.
Greg,
He had nothing to do
please
with it.
stop interrupting me.
You even took credit for it.
Greg, are you going to grow up a little bit and follow the rules? I thought they gave you Robert's rules to learn something.
You guys are the ones who repealed it.
Please allow this meeting to go along with our interruption. The dinners were set up following the advice of council that only 2 trustees be with the candidates at each meeting. Last night, all of a sudden, we had 3. Greg showed up. Pete was good enough to leave so that we did not have 3. And there appears to be a lot of concern over certain trustees want to be at every meeting. So I think that at this point in time, we will cancel all the informal dinners from here on and not have this problem present for any of the trustees. So that's just an item for information.
So
Yes, Todd,
are we discussing that, or has a decision been made?
the decision has been made.
Okay. Now that is
Yes, Todd.
counter to the procedure that's been followed as the norm here in prior searches, and counter to even the instructions from our search company and what was laid out as the plan and expectations and shared with the search committee. She specifically called out that all 5 trustees would be dining informally with each of the candidates. We have that in writing, and quite frankly, now we've just changed the process because we've had 1 individual that has gone through that, and we'll have 3 that will not. So now the question is, how do you not either count, or how do you balance the fact that whoever had a meal with him last night and got to meet with him and talk with him, and I find some people's strength may be in the interview process, some people's strength may be in the dinner process in the informal setting that may be very engaging and very personable, and you may find that makes a real difference in your opinion of them, and vice versa, or how you think that they'll work with constituents and such. So again, we just keep adding more inconsistencies here, and I'm concerned about that. So I don't know what's the answer. I guess we just get rid of it, or versus all five. And again, we're already down the path a little bit. So I guess Dr. Brand was the guinea pig, for better or for worse. But
Todd, I appreciate your comment and I understand where you're coming from. Unfortunately, Trustee McKenzie broke the protocol last night. And when that happens, it makes it difficult to do that in the future. So that's the reason for the change.
no, sir, I have to disagree with you, and I'll do it politely. But that's BS. I don't know who actually assigned the people to dinner, and we keep saying the president's office, but I know the president was involved in it. So I don't know if you guys are now directing Shannon, you've become her new supervisor. Well, Mark works for you, Shannon might as well work for you. There's a couple other people I think that work for you too, and I'm not sure who Angela works for. But having said that, you guys broke the protocol when you didn't set it up for all 5 trustees to go to dinner with each of the candidates. So to put that on Greg, that's not appropriate. You guys have been squirming and worming and twisting and convoluting and trying to make this thing work the way you want and trying to shove this square peg in this round hole. And you keep tripping over yourselves because you guys are not playing it right. And so you've got to keep kind of figuring out how you're going to maneuver and make this work. And this is another example of that. This is an example of that. We're going to have a couple more before we're done, I'm sure. You're trying to get to this goal, and you're going to try to get there no matter what. Whatever, like the fish hitting his head against the dam, one way or the other, he's going to try to get through it. But it just invalidates, it cheapens. This whole process just keeps getting more and more laughable. And you guys own it. You'll own it. It's going to be on you guys. And if you think you're running in November, yeah, you really need to think about this because it's going to stick to you like a tar baby.
I have something to say.
Let's get Jermaine.
You should just step up and walk away.
Subject that we're discussing here. Do you have a discussion? Yes.
Never once was I ever consulted on who I want to go to dinner with. And you even, sir, just claimed at the meeting yesterday, said when I asked who made these decisions and who's going to dinner, you said I. So don't say the president's office. You said, I'll play the recording for you, sir. You said you chose. And I said, with what authority? And you said mine. And I said, you have no authority more than any other trustees. We just listened to former trustee Wood say that for like 2 years. Apparently you weren't even paying attention at the board meetings. She was mislabeling that on Todd, who wasn't abusing anyone else's trustees. Like you're the one who's just stifling all of us. Well, shoot, Todd and I are like second-rate trustees, and I can tell you, I can look at how you organize the dinner, sir, that you're stacking the deck against some candidate, because tonight it was Pete and me to go with this dinner, and you were going to attend all the other candidates' dinners. So I can already tell, like, oh, whoa, that says a lot right now.
Greg, I think you have some of your facts wrong. Number one, the president's office set all of this up. I take responsibility for what they did. I'm chair, and I take that responsibility.
You're lucky the presidents are not here to contradict you, because I'm
Well,
that's putting him in a tight spot, sir.
That's your choice.
Can we call him?
No, not that right now.
Yeah, I would think not.
We have other business we need to deal with, Greg. In fact, Todd, you have one more comment? We really need to get this candidate in and allow him to be interviewed.
We're having a discussion about how interactions should be happening between the trustees and how we should be, everything from negotiating the schedule to accommodate all of us to even who's available, who wants to go to dinner. Again, should have been all 5. And then we get to, we're going to do subsets. I mean, quite frankly, would anybody believe that if I had any part of this, that I would have chosen John as my dinner partner on Monday? I mean, just saying. Not too many people would have guessed that one.
I would like to say one more thing.
Greg, make it short, please.
I'll make it
We need
short.
to move on.
I don't like to relay conversations that I have with individuals, but I did talk to the president, sir, when I was after the meeting yesterday, and because you're giving him so much credit for planning all this, and he said that he's completely abstained out of this whole process. So the fact that you keep saying that the president's office, sir, it makes it I don't know how he can completely abstain and have basically kept completely out of the loop on this, to not influence it, and to credit to him, it's very respectful, and our interim President Savali has done an excellent job through all this out. But for you not to just claim that you've made all the decisions this far, with counsel of Mark, of course, believe me, you guys seem to be conniving pretty well.
Thank you, Greg. I think that's enough for now. I would like to invite the candidate in. I think, Laura, if you would ask him to come on in and join us, I would appreciate that.
So are we going to vote?
There is no motion on the floor.
There is. You just made a decision, sir.
The decision is not a motion. It's a chair decision.
Mr. Chairman, the decision to set up these individual dinners was not made by the board. It was set up. Some of the board members did object to it, and you took responsibility, the authority for those dinners, and because of the objections, and this has been discussed, that there are no longer going to be those individualized informal dinners. So I think that has been resolved. So it doesn't require a motion and a vote.
Thank you.
So we're unilaterally making these decisions now. Okay. So it's not going to the board as a whole, even as a formality, even though if we know we're going to get voted down 3-2, that's pretty poor form, Mark. We're just going to change how we do things. Okay.
We did.
I'm going to have these come right on over here.
Okay. How are all of you?
We're just having a chat.
No problem at all. Nice to meet you.
Feel the love.
We met just a little bit ago. Good to see you, Greg. It's good to see you again. Thanks.
Yes, you're welcome.
And our fifth member is on,
It's nice to see you.
John Katie.
So I do make the motion that no more dinners happen from here on out in the interview process. Do I have a second?
The motion dies without a second.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Not appearing. All those in
I have a
favor?
discussion, actually. I was waiting for you to recognize me.
All right.
Okay. I think it's wrong that we change the process halfway through. I feel that it's a disservice to our candidates that have gone early in this process. I feel like you guys are engineering this process in a way that exposes the college to future liabilities. And I think it's wrong that anyone would architect and plan a taxpayer paid for bill that the taxpayers are paying for the trustees and not include all the trustees. Now, I just want, for the record straight, I paid my bill last night, even though you wouldn't let me. So technically, you overpaid your relatives. So that's common. I mean, not surprised from you guys' group. But
Are you finished? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
all right.
All those opposed, nay. Nay.
I didn't hear any votes. It passes. Abstains.
Mr. Chairman, could you restate the motion?
Would you restate your motion, please?
For consistency, my motion is this, that for this process to continue,
Hold on. The motion I thought was to not have any more dinners. Is that not the motion that you made? Let me make sure we're clear. But then you made a comment you made the motion, there was a second, then there was the comment period. Sorry. And your comment was that you felt, maybe I'm missing this, for consistency, we should all 5 of us be there and we should have the same process for all 4 of the remaining candidates. But the original motion I thought was a follow-on and said, then fine, if we're going to cancel, then we need to actually have a motion to cancel it.
yes, my motion was to basically give the board what you guys wanted, that were to formalize it to be a board decision instead of dictator Chair Wolf having a unilateral decision. So that's what my motion was. But I'd like to amend the motion.
Or you can withdraw and make a new one.
Well, I'm afraid I won't get recognized by the dictator chair again. So I make an amended motion my amended motion is that this process cannot continue until all 5 trustees participate in dinners with candidates. So we have a consistent process moving forward.
We have a motion on the floor, and we do not have a second to your amendment.
I'll make the second for the purposes of discussion.
Okay, is there discussion?
I think the fact that you guys are trying to change this partway through the interviews is abysmal. I mean, it's definitely a disservice to the candidates, and you guys are screwing this process up. It seems intentionally.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie, now you want to change it again from, you're saying that we want to change it, but yet you just made a motion to change it again from what it was, so it wouldn't be consistent either way.
May I respond? Are you done?
There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion?
I wish to respond to him. I just asked if I could respond. You don't want me to interrupt with people.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I have said all along that trustees should attend dinners with candidates. It is not too late for us to still have dinners with the candidate yesterday. Okay, we can, as a board, still, he hasn't left yet. Okay, I mean, I don't think so. He was here around noon, or we can call him real quick. But, or we can even have him come back for a dinner. But as a board, we all should be included, especially for taxpayer-paid dinners for trustees. There's no more trustees' rights than other people. So what I want, and what I said yesterday, is that we all should be included in this process, that we all should eat dinner with the candidates, and that we all be equally informed. I mean, you were even talking about our dinner yesterday, about the Presidential Search Committee material, about the Elton John's story that we had at dinner, right? I mean, these information that we're having outside of open session, this is part of our deliberation and consideration of these candidates. So let's do this process right. Let's get the trustees all on board and do these dinners with these people. Otherwise,
I think everyone understands what you're trying to bring. If there's no other, yes?
Mr. Chairman, just a clarification for the motion, because there's been a lot of discussion. The current motion that you would be voting on is a motion that the process not move forward for interviews until the trustees can arrange dinners with the candidates.
I think
that was the motion.
I think Pete's right, though. I think we have to vote on the amendment first. The amendment was that all 5 trustees would be there for the remaining 3 dinners.
yes.
That is the current motion, right? The amended
Yeah,
motion.
so I think
The
Pete's
amendment.
right. We have to speak to the amendment before we go back to the
So
original.
that would stop the process if you can't all get together.
So the motion is to make sure that all 5 trustees are at all sessions.
Yes. That's the amended motion. That's
That's
just
the amended motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
So we're back to the
The
original
motion
motion.
fails 3-2.
The amendment.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, the current motion, the pending motion, so I was checking here, the motion now is for the board to approve the decision to not have these informal dinners.
Correct. Any further discussion? I think we've discussed this adequately.
No, I would like to say something.
I'm sure you did. Go ahead. And keep it brief, please. We have a candidate here waiting to be
You
here.
guys have been trying to silence me this whole time, and now you silence my questions. I feel like I'm not even a member of this board of trustees, and we're supposed to. Anyway,
Greg, would you please make your comment and we'll move along?
thank you. Okay, we had a dinner with a candidate last night. It was a great experience. I have great impressions of that candidate. Not providing future candidates that same type of experience is a disservice, and it's a change to this process, and I feel like we're headed towards a failed search by not sticking, by changing the process that you guys are doing, that this motion, if it passes, is changing.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if we wait till 5 of us can attend a dinner, we may wait forever. I mean, Trustee Banducci tells me that he's got military obligations. I know Trustee McKenzie has a job, so does Trustee Burchett. I just don't see how that can move forward, and I don't want to stop this. We have to hire a president.
Thank you. Once again,
Oh, we have somebody who wants to say something.
Trustee Benton.
You know, John, that's a compelling argument. Unfortunately, it's a contrived argument because it's a manufactured timeline that we're working under. Had we originally set up 5 dates that would have been able to be coalesced around by all 5 trustees, those dates would have included the ability to do the interviews and to do the dinner. So by compressing the schedule and pushing it forward as much as you guys could do, as much as Angela could orchestrate along with Karen and everybody else, and Shannon, you forced this. And the worst part is the decisions were made. We were asked to submit our dates and our availability. And the reality is, let's just be honest, don't be disingenuous about it. The dates were pretty well set. Angela had those dates because she was working with the candidates. So even as I was submitting stuff, it was already a moot point. And David, you and I were supposed to talk, and we talked, and you said, and you asked, and I sent them to you again by email, and you're concerned. I'm going to suggest you from the communications that have been shared, that decision had already been made. So we were kind of chasing our tail a little bit at that point. So I'm very disappointed. So John, yeah, your point is valid, but only in the context of how this got forced and how we did not do it correctly in the first place and set up the dates so that all 5 of us were available for both, as we had done in the past and previously, where all 5 of us would be there at the dinner and at the interview. So,
Trustee McKenzie, do you have something different in this remains of the motion?
Yes, it's very much. He speaks about the need to install a new president, new permanent president. I would just like to remind everyone what the accreditation agency said. When they came here for a fact-finding mission, they found us, our current interim Sabali president.
What does this have to do with dinners?
He's talking about the need, and what if we can't meet, ever meet?
Talking about dinners.
You know, what was he talking about? Why was he talking about the need to do it? He's saying we can't do the dinners and the importance to do the dinners because we need to hire the president. I'm addressing that. The fact that we have a fabulous president, the accreditation agencies even recognize the stellar work that our interim president is doing at this institution. They said that we are fully compliant. The only thing dysfunctional is the board, and that's the board as a whole, not an individual person. That's people that can't recognize decisions like former Trustee Wood and former Howard.
Please do not start talking about people like that. That's not germane to the subject, and that's not kind.
Well, sir, elected officials, we're allowed to critique them, and especially when the accreditation agency even does it. So here we go. We are rushing something that we don't need to rush because you guys have a timeline of November and you know it. We have plenty of emails from the community, and I bet you more are going to come in because they're disgusted with the lack of local control that you bought through the State Board of Education. And what else? So you're afraid that we can't go into executive session, which you've proven, Trustee Getty, that we can't make these decisions. So if we can't even go into executive session for a dinner, how can we make these decisions as a whole? What are we doing here?
I'd like to move along here. I think we've discussed this plenty.
So the motion is to cancel all future dinners. Call the question.
The motion is to cancel all future dinners. Yes. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion passed 3-2.
This is why we broke this. You guys own it because you broke it and you created this schedule. And David, I know you didn't like it, and I know that Greg has spoken a lot, but as he's responding to what I said in response to Trustee Getty, at the bottom line of this is still about the schedule. Why the schedule has been set up the way it has, and the timing of the schedule, and the days that were chosen, and the lack of collaboration in that. And that's what's forced the schedule, why we're doing all these gymnastics, trying to figure this out, and why now we're not gonna have the chance with the last 3 candidates to have a meal with them and get to know them on a different level, maybe meet their spouse. And only 2 of you got to do it last night anyway, so I'm gonna miss half the interviews and I'll have no chance informally with any of the trustees. Where does that put me at this point now in the selection? And so maybe that's how so by that I'm guessing that this unimportant, and my vote doesn't matter and my input doesn't matter because you basically have canceled me on this. So very disappointed. This is not how it should have gone. And I'm elected, he's elected. You guys aren't elected. You guys are rented trustee. Somebody paid just enough money from the chain of command. I've seen all John's emails. We've got them. They've all been FOIA'd. They've been shared. And all the things that were working behind the scenes and the folk from the governor's office and even saw Sean on there and all the folks that worked all this thing for months and months and months and months and months. But he and I are the only ones elected. So, you know, sir, you've made a statement. The people have told us to do this. No, sir, they have not. The people haven't told you anything. You were never been voted for. Neither of you 3 have. You have a small vocal minority that's afraid of losing power. I always tell everybody everything comes down to money, power, and control. And this is a classic example of a group of folks, especially some of the folks in downtown, that are losing their grip on power. Their next generation just got crushed into ballot on May 17th. And as soon as Mr. Little's gone, that heads to Butch and all that, they're losing more and more of that. And this is one of their last vestiges of it. And it's very sad to see this hold on by the fingernails for this power and this control of NIC. And it's just a time anyway. It's just time.
Laura, would you please invite the candidate to come back on in, and we'll see if we can't have an interview.
I make a motion.
The dinosaurs are going.
A motion for informal trustee meetings.
Mr. Chairman, there's no such motion on the agenda. We've covered everything that.
Actually, it's the topic is process for informal trustee meetings with candidates.
Is there something beyond dinners on that? Because I didn't even know that was going to be about the dinners, to be honest. I'm just saying, when I saw the agenda item, I didn't correlate that to dinners because I actually called Greg and I actually talked to my wife later and I said, I don't even know what the heck that is. Informal trustee meetings, I didn't know what form that was going to take. That could be a number of different things. So it's interesting, that's the dinners. I guess I didn't expect you guys to cancel the dinners. That surprised me. That was unexpected.
Dr. Taylor?
Yes.
We would love to interview you. I have a list of questions here.
Okay.
I'll give to you. I have 2 questions to ask of you. Have you seen on Zoom the possibility of yesterday's interview?
I did not.
Have you seen this list of
I
questions?
have not seen this list of
Thank you
questions.
very much.
No problem.
Trustees are going to take turns asking you questions.
Okay.
We're going to save trustee questions till the end of the interview, and the 10 questions have been dealt with. And I will start off with the first one.
Okay.
Understanding the mission and vision of North Idaho College, walk us through what you believe are the most important elements of being a visionary president at NIC. Describe how your leadership style and approach will support a climate of engagement, accountability, and healing.
The words in there, healing, mission, vision, accountability, I mean, those are all common leadership words, but I think they're adequate and appropriate for this search, but they would be for any search too. So I don't think that's unique. The question at the heart of that I want to address first is that I think, especially after walking through campus today and meeting with constituency groups, tremendous, not only potential, but realization of potential in the past 90 years of meeting this goal of being a community college. And as I've said to the community groups, to me, one of the reasons I was most interested is the community aspect. It fits a niche in our higher educational landscape that's disappearing in terms of not only the Intermountain West, but across the nation. So the reason I gave that little quick overview is the mission has to be further defined. Not the strategic plan, but the buy-in for the fact of what is the future of this college. And I think that's part of the healing, is a leader who can bring together this idea that's out there. And I think everyone has a a pretty strong idea of the purpose and the mission and vision for North Idaho College. I just think that it's that the leadership element missing is not from the board. That's the role of a president, to message, articulate, reiterate, strengthen that vision. Now, I think that the vision and the mission exist, but there's some refinements that need to happen. And you do have a face of an institution, which is the president, someone who can not share their vision, but share the vision of the board, faculty, staff, professional staff. So the part of that, the healing part, is interesting to me, because I do feel like healing doesn't imply or need to imply that there was someone you have to heal from or an event. It can literally be just time without direction from the presidential level. And I'm not even saying that you haven't had an interim president that's provided that, but having been in an interim role, interim is very different than permanent. So I think having a president come in, whether that's myself or someone else, the most important thing is to establish not lines of communication, but lines of trust between the groups that I've met with today. They're all poised. The magic that's in the staff and faculty and students, it's not gone. The passion that's in this group, it's not gone. You guys care extremely a lot about the community and the college. I feel like the presidential role is that linchpin to hold it all together. And it has to be someone that's trusted, someone who can bring those parties together, and frankly, someone who can speak at the students on the campus and trustees in a way that helps everyone understand that mission and the vision. Healing comes over time, though, and I don't think healing implies, I got to say that again, I don't think healing implies, I'm a cancer survivor. When you hear a word, like from a doctor, you got cancer. Certainly it's a gut punch. You feel like, oh, I don't think the gut punch that's happened to North Idaho, I said it in the first round of interviews. Our biggest challenges are ahead, not behind. The thing that's challenging this college is its relevance in place and being prepared for that. So the role of the president, I don't think, is to rehash the past. It's to build the future with groups working together. And I think that takes senior level leadership, especially for a complex community college. But the beauty is you're not so big, not so distinctly unique. You fill a niche, especially in the Intermountain West.
Thank you. Greg, you have question number 2. Go right ahead.
I'm not allowed to ask a follow-up question, just to be clear about the process, even though I have a follow-up question.
Correct.
You're stifling my question until we're out of context.
That is correct. But you can ask him the second question on the list.
Dr. Wolf, may I ask a question? What's going to dictate at the end whether we get to ask follow-up questions or not? Or are we being told that we just have to wait to ask the follow-up questions till after the 10 questions have been answered? Because I guess I'm wondering what's going to be the criteria here and the standard, because I'm making notes too, and I'll have follow-up questions. So I'd like to know what I can anticipate and whether I'm going to have the ability to ask follow-up questions. As the guy that's elected, been on here for 9.5 years, former board chair, I'd like the ability to ask questions at some point to follow up with the answers that we're getting.
I'm hoping that we'll have lots of time for your questions if we don't take too much time going over old things like this.
I just asked the question. I wasn't here yesterday. You guys have changed the rules today from how you were doing it.
Greg, would you read the second question for the doctor, please?
Number 2, how would you reestablish a positive public image with our community and business partners to continue and evolve our efforts to best prepare and sustain the region's workforce?
The image for higher education around the nation is certainly not under attack, but questioned. And I feel like that's a great question in terms of what's the image of North Idaho. You have a unique position in the 5 counties in northern Idaho where you've got a longevity that's established a reputation. The problem with images, especially in a higher education institution where things have changed on the landscape, I mean, not just the pandemic, but over time, trust in public institutions. That positive image is one of the things, even at an institution like mine, Utah State University. You say the name, almost everyone in the nation would know where it is and what it is, but no one may be able to define, again, the purpose and the place. So establishing the image is not just saying we're a good college. It's not just saying, hey, we're a great investment. In fact, it's not even just saying, hey, we're cheap, or we don't cost as much as someone down the road. It's actually highlighting what's gone on to benefit the local economy, local workforce, and what's strengthening the region. So the role of a president in terms of image and public perception isn't saying, oh, it's good, we're great, we do wonderful things. It's being specific. Meeting in chambers, Rotary clubs, working with executive leaders of industry, and talking about what's come out of the college, talking about what the college has done to help support the workforce development. One of the reasons that I actually am interested in this position is the fact that colleges have a nimbleness that universities do not. You have the ability to adapt to the workforce needs in a region. You have the ability to leverage resources that come from the state and locally, but then you kind of turn around and talk about what those resources return. What was the return on that investment for an individual, for a family, for a community, for an industry, or a sector within the economy that paid off? Without that, the public perception becomes a nebulous idea of, hey, go to college, it's a good experience. We better be very specific about what the outcomes are for the community to be a community college. I just one last thought on that. The role of a president is also at times to talk about the areas we need to improve. So the image isn't always a perfect image. Sometimes the image is things where we have to do better. Support student groups, or diversifying the population, or better resources with money. So I don't think the role of a president is to be a Pollyanna and constantly singing wonderful things, but it's to be accurate and authentic in communicating about the benefits of the college.
Thank you. Todd, you have question number 3.
Can we just pause a moment while I write down my questions?
Actually, I don't believe with you.
Excuse me, I got one more.
Can you give me just 30 seconds, a minute, just while I
I'd be
write
happy
down?
to give you 30 seconds.
It wouldn't be a minute.
Excuse me, it was Pete, I'm sorry.
What type of programming and curriculum innovations have you implemented to increase student retention, completion, graduation, and persistence rates?
So all questions have been good. This one's my favorite so far because it's at the heart of what I really enjoy doing, but it's also a 3-hour answer, but I'll give you the 5-minute synopsis. So I have a dual mission. I have associate degree students, certificate students, and graduate degrees, all the way up to PhDs at my institution. When I took over 6.5 years ago, my average bachelor's degree was 7.4 years to get through a 4-year degree. And, that's not unheard of, especially in the Intermountain West, where people do military service, church service, Peace Corps, sometimes that longevity. The problem is when we're competing with either private schools or even non-higher education access to workforce, our students, they don't have that time to waste. They also don't have the luxury I have, which was a relatively modest economy. They need to get in the workforce if they want to do things like achieve some of their dreams. So reducing graduation time is one of the fastest things to build retention. They burn out before 7 years for a bachelor's or 3 or 4 years for an associate's. The problem gets worse the farther in the journey you go. Graduate degrees are a little different. People build their own platform, their own time frame around careers. I've brought that time down to 5.4 years. So a year ago we were down to 2 years, or 1.5, we're now down to 2 years. So we're almost at the national average. Now, half of my students are non-traditional or post-traditional bachelor's degree students, balancing a career, working in the oil and gas industry, working for the federal government, for the Forest Service, BLM. So there is some reason to allow for a little bit of longevity. The way we did that, 2 big efforts. One, we started a first-year success program, very similar to what North Idaho has done with their first-year program there. One of the problems we have in higher ed is that more than half our students now are first-generation students, don't have the support. So if we want to retain students, we have to build the support system. My main campus in Logan had a counseling center, but not our branch campuses. My regional campuses across eastern Utah, if they needed emotional health, behavioral health, and 62% of students in higher ed do, as well as the general population, I needed counselors on my campus. If we're referring academic advising to a different location, it's a totally different experience. It's not equitable with what they would get at a main campus. The other thing was, especially in my region, I have two large populations, the Northern Ute tribe and the Navajo Nation. I hired advisors and success coaches from the Navajo Nation or from the Ute tribe to help advise and understand the journey of those students. As much as I would like to sit with a student who has a different background than me and say, I get it, the truth is, I don't. And so we built those programs to help support students as they enter. When I look at Coeur d'Alene and these 5 counties in northern Idaho, my population is much more dispersed and less dense than what you have here. You have regions that are similar to mine. I can't burn through students, get them into college, and then get them out without success. Eventually, I'll be out of students that are interested in my setting. So even though you have a larger population, you still can't burn through the goodwill of students or the community in terms of getting them in but not completing. But the other thing I did is that, and I mentioned this in one of the open forums today, my associate director for one of my campus, he's a full professor, we developed a mentoring program for students, not advising in the academic sense, but our faculty are each assigned a handful of students. I maintain a faculty role, and really this is the brainchild of this faculty member. It's called our Faculty to Student Mentoring Program. I have 3 mentees that I currently mentor. I don't give them the academic advice. I don't tell them which classes to take. But the role I occupy is what my brothers or my parents would have done for me. How do I talk to a professor? Where do I go if I have a complaint? What do I do if something happened that I don't understand in a higher ed vernacular? We have acronyms everywhere in higher education. First-gen students or even second-gen students don't understand the landscape anymore. That program, we've been 3 years in existence. We have a 17% retention over those who are not in the program. For my campuses alone, this year, $22 million were saved by returning tuition that would have left if you take that 17%. It's a substantial savings. To me, the money matters, but more important, it's the goodwill that those students know because they're completing their degree, moving on, and those are the ones who will, in an evangelical way, get new students back to my institution. So when you look at North Idaho, you've got some of those things, your first year success program or your first year experience, it's spot on. The other thing is, you can look at other colleges and universities and say, this is what works for them. The beauty of North Idaho, and I've said this in a number of meetings today, you have some very traditional elements that you should not lose, but retain, but strengthen. First year experience shouldn't be an online experience. It should be an engaging experience on campus. It shouldn't be something they check off asynchronously to go through some trainings or modules, how to be successful. It needs to be something they experience. Your student body age, your type of student. So some of those programs are really key. The last part for me goes back to your first question, the identity. More than half of the students of my campuses don't know why they went to college. They went to college or a university because someone told them that was the path they needed to take. We also need to help students, once they're enrolled, understand why they're in college. And we make that assumption. You made a choice to come. So we assume you know why you're here. The truth is, especially young students, they don't know why. So let's work not on first year experiences, but also first year discovery. Not academic discovery, but what we promote in advance, go to high schools, frankly, all the way down into junior high, because that's where you should start recruiting, because they've made a decision long before 10th grade. But we also have to keep doing that after they're with you. You have to keep reminding them the benefits and the value of college. It's too hard today to persist, not only in college, in the workforce. Look what's happening. It's too hard for people to maintain what's hard. Very different than, and frankly, this room, I can say, I don't know who's on Zoom, but that was in our character, that was in our personality. That's something that has to be built, and one of the things that a college does is not just build academic or trades, but persistence and stamina for those things that are hard. So I just have to say, we brought down the graduation rate We've increased the support through mostly public funding, but some private funding.
Brought down the graduation?
The great graduation time. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, yeah.
Don't brag about that.
No, the time, the rate's gone up. I would say that's still an area we're working on, by the way, since I mentioned it, and Greg, you brought it up. Graduation rate is abysmal across the country. It's something we've got to fix.
Do you know yours?
I do know mine. Yeah, 36%. Okay, yep. And I mirror Utah State as a whole. But there is a caveat to understanding my graduation rate. I actually don't care if they graduate from my specific campus. I care that they graduate. So when I look at my institution as a non-transfer institution, North Idaho is a transfer academic school. If I can send them on to the University of Utah, Utah Valley University, Utah Tech College, or Utah Tech University, I see that as a success. The 30 some odd percent, 36%, 39%, that's my graduation rate from my campus, but I also have 30% that graduated somewhere else in the state of Utah. To me, that's a success. I mean, I'd like to keep them, but as long as they graduate, as long as I've prepared them for graduation.
Thank you.
Can we have a minute?
Todd, you have question number 4?
Can you wait a minute? Yes.
You want a few minutes again? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It'll give me a minute to take a drink, so thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think, you know the question.
I looked.
Actually, you can cheat for a moment and look at it, yeah.
Okay, I'll do it again, because
You know, I don't know about you, but we get to a certain age, 30 seconds later, we might forget what we had for breakfast. So.
sorry, what's that? I'm just joking.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Once I became a grandfather, I started using that as an excuse, you know, you have to certain age.
Yeah.
Take those liberties and privileges.
My oldest is 32, and I'm not a grandfather yet, and so it's not the grandchildren. It's
When that time comes, you'll love it.
that's what I hope.
I'm coming with a question right now.
You know what, I'm giving you just a second, I'm watching you. I'll see when your brow furrows and I know you're at that spot.
I'm gonna smile. That's what I'm gonna. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. Gonna go there, just a second, I'm gonna write one more thing, because you got me thinking about something too, so.
I can answer if you don't. I've read it.
Well, we don't want to lose our questions.
That's right.
So,
And you need it on recording.
yeah.
Good point.
All right. What would be your short-term strategy to increase enrollment in the current competitive landscape?
Enrollments are something that I've been proud of everywhere I've been, in the ability to increase enrollments. I've been 6 years at Utah State, and all but one semester I've increased enrollment. The only semester I didn't was last spring, and the reason why is because I had a huge increase spring of 20 because of the pandemic. So instead of students going to Logan, the Wasatch Front, large universities, they actually stayed with me. The pandemic helped my rural campus enrollments. People stayed home for many reasons. So then the following year, as the pandemic eased in Utah and things opened up, I actually went down that semester, but was still higher than any previous semester. So I'm very proud of that. But the question is, what steps? And I'm going to use 2 strategies I've used, and one of them is unique. At my campuses, my graduate students don't bring me revenue. They're graduate students assigned to the colleges. I actually have a graduate student on my campus in my department who takes all our classes at my campus, but we don't see any tuition revenue from that. It stays in the academic department. I still double down on recruiting and retaining graduate students. The reason I use that example is not economically in my best interest, but it's in every bit my best interest to be the identity of the institution. I want to be the place where students look for graduate training, It doesn't cost me as much money as an undergraduate student either. The instruction generally happens via technology and other methods. Part of it is understanding first, and I think the jack of all trades approach that I don't think you've employed, but you've fallen into, which is everyone should be at North Idaho. Truth is, that's just not true. It's a great place. I would have loved this as an undergraduate. I went to the University of Utah, in the early 80s, and I was the 4th in my family to go there. I would have done 10 times better at an institution like this. What I get at is we need to define what is our mission, what is our purpose and population served, and that's not just academic. When I went through the Parker Center yesterday, I was blown away by the potential, not only for the programs, but the potential of students around the Parker Center. You know, when I look at the housing costs in Coeur d'Alene and the unlikelihood that a large family with 10 kids is going to buy a house in this region, we have to plan for future enrollment growth in a methodology and a modality that will actually support it where those families are. And they will travel, but we also have to figure out what is our main purpose or our top 3 main purposes. And I would not get rid of the trades or career or technical education. That's actually one of the things that's your secret sauce. And you do something here that's very uncommon outside of the state of Idaho, where a lot of technical colleges are specific to technical institution and training. Utah, we have 8 technical colleges, 8 academic institutions. We do have Salt Lake Community College, which is a dual mission. We're actually removing those. Hang on to that. That's the part that actually responds to workforce development. Knowing that and recruiting those students doesn't hurt the academic recruitment. So the part about it is establishing our identity and our purpose and messaging that to students. I also have to say, so many times over the last 5 years, but it could even be 10, I've heard people talk about institutions like North Idaho being a second choice. Like, we don't want to be people's second choice. People think U of I, Idaho State, you know, Washington State. The truth is, I actually don't think that they think that as much as we assume they think that. We tell people that. We understand we might be your second choice. That's actually negative talk to students who are potentially our students. You'd be surprised how many students do not want to leave home versus 20 years ago who did want to leave home. This is an incredible region, not just because of the landscape, but people are wary of other places where they didn't grow up today. It's changing the landscape of what students want. Also the economics, even for an undergraduate degree, to go to and I'll use University of Utah or even University of Idaho, residential, housing costs, food costs, our students today calculate that into their equation. They're looking to get through without debt because they don't know for sure that they'll be able to pay that off. Truthfully, I believe they still will. The numbers speak that, but they don't buy into it as much as we once did. So, finding and messaging what our programs and our key programs are. I also would say within the trades and certificates, evolving always to meet workforce needs. When I talked to Doug Anderson yesterday about some of his innovative approaches of doubling up his diesel mechanics so the lectures overlap and the 2 labs, he's got more students in that program from an innovative approach. So increasing enrollment also comes from the instructional side. How do we get more seats in certain programs? And I would also say, having run an online college at one point in my career, online is a tool, it's not the answer. So especially for a college like North Idaho, it should be something that benefits the college and the future enrollment. But to think that's an easy answer for increasing enrollment, it actually undermines the identity and the mission of what we do here.
How did that such a goal, you're saying?
Yeah, I would use technology as a way to innovate, but not to replace the college identity. That this would be someplace where people have an experience face-to-face and are on campus, as opposed to saying we could leverage an asynchronous online Canvas platform for all degrees, reduce cost on campus. What you're reducing is the engagement and support of North Idaho College.
Can I just say one second thing? Well, I'll just say, the students during the pandemic did definitely say what you just said.
Oh, no question.
That's what they want, to be in person like
No
that.
question.
They're in tune with that.
Yeah. Thanks for.
Greg, you need 30 seconds again?
No, actually, I'm good on this one.
Yeah, okay. The next question is you, John. Do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
Mr. Chairman, would you please read it? I'm a techno czar and can't get the video and the questions up on the same screen.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, give us an example of innovative strategies that you've deployed to retain and attract high-performing talent. And you've been just discussing that to a certain degree.
Sure, but I could add some kind of new elements to that. Because I'm a research institution, not just an academic, and you have a research component here. For a 2-year college, you have some interesting, research funding for some of the sciences. One of the things I find, and you have also a tremendous amount of financial support, actually for the size of your institution. Someday I hope to say we will have a lot of financial support. I have found though that retention is not a financial proposition. More money at the problem of retention directly to students, it's beneficial, but it doesn't solve the problem. Using that money to leverage opportunities does make a difference. So in my case, I created an undergraduate research funding program. So students who want to be a doctor, students who want to be a veterinarian, and students who are in my even physician's assistance program or biology program. I was a biology undergraduate at the University of Utah. Now I didn't want to be a doctor like my dad, he's an MD. I wanted to be in the field. But most of our traditional programs don't put you in the field until you have the degree. So I used those resources and that funding to fund undergraduate research connected with my faculty in the field. The reason that works is instead of saying someday, even business, entrepreneurship, instead of saying someday you'll have the opportunity to use these skills, when we get them in the field, whether that's the natural environment, the business ecosystem, or in the healthcare field, they're starting to use those skills. That motivates them to return and continue. This model comes from nursing. I ran a nursing college. I have a tremendously successful nursing college now, and you have that. Nursing puts them in the field early. The workforce needs them now. If they start as a CNA or they start as an LPN, they can work while they continue to get an RN, a BSN, MSN. That's the model students want today. It's not just the economics, it's they want to be doing what they're passionate about doing. I'll use teaching. My mother was a teacher for 40 years. My mother-in-law was a teacher. People grow up wanting to teach. There's one reason we don't get male teachers. I mean, there's lots of reasons we don't get male teachers at the same rate we get female. Female teachers and male, probably both before the age of 8, both taught in a play setting. We aren't as patient, sometimes men, to get into the field to make a difference. They're willing to pay the price at that age. We wanted to get into the workforce. Teaching, I developed a model at Utah State University that puts them in the classroom as a paraprofessional, as an associate degree credentialed teacher. The state has approved it, and a bachelor's degree. And that's partly because of the need in Utah where we can't get and retain adequate teaching staff. But you know what it also did? It got them through my program. They stay now. And that's part of also bringing down that graduation time, not rate, was helping them see progress by having them work in the field. In the old model it was summer internships. In the new model, it's got to be working with industry and partners along the way because they need that experience.
Hold on, I got a good idea.
While he's doing that, I think this won't distract. The other part about to retain and attract high-performing talents, getting them to be mentors for other students. Back to the teaching K through 12 model, when people start teaching, they understand their subject better. When, in your case, in my case, USA, in your case, is it NICSA, North Idaho College Student Association? I met Alex today. Alex he's one of the upcoming senators for this next year. That's who should be talking to students about staying in school, not me. He's passionate about it. So we have to do that same thing, mentoring from student to student.
Thank you. Frank, let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I will need 2 minutes maybe.
Sorry about that. I thought by speaking I wouldn't delay, but yeah.
We have a pause going. ASNIC,
Thank you.
ASNIC.
ASNIC, thank you. So I said NICSA. So first change I'll make is, no, I'm just joking. So ASNIC, thank you. It almost sounds like Aslan.
Yeah, those movies.
I am. Have the books more than the movies. It just sounds like a government program. So, yeah.
didn't know you were
Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate the time.
Question number 6 is mine. How would you describe the financial condition of NIC? Where would you focus your attention? Provide us the best examples that reflect your ability to manage NIC finances today and post-pandemic.
So I have looked at the budgets. You have a lot of public information that all colleges have available. That was helpful. Also looked over things. It's sometimes hard to know how a college, when everything is internally looking, compares to other colleges. However, I do spend a lot of time with different colleges for different reasons. And one of the things that I've been impressed with is the financial situation of North Idaho College. I do feel like you are post-pandemic in a much better place than other institutions who are struggling not only with enrollment, but state funding. The Intermountain West is economically doing better than other regions of the country. That tends to help higher education. I also think Idaho has a commitment to higher education and access. Those are two benefits that keep the budget. I also think you can't overlook the fact that these budgets are benefited by the local taxes. When I was at Colorado Mountain College, we had Pitkin County. Pitkin County is Aspen. We kept our tuition at $57 a credit because the mill levy from Pitkin County in effect offset college operation costs. Not that good here, but you have benefit from a community that's invested in the college. So in terms of finances, where I do think the post-pandemic financial picture can probably be not altered, but focused, I do think our challenge, if I can say, is going to be retention of staff and faculty for many, many reasons. Number one, housing costs are the initial one, but the workforce has changed. When they went home and worked, whether that be in higher education or industry, they just don't see the same value in coming back. I had certain faculty and staff members that suffered during the pandemic because they're extroverts and wanted to be around people. I had others who were introverts who found this to be such an amazing opportunity. I also think they're healing, back to the word of healing. The pandemic, and I don't mean the actual pandemic, I mean the world around the pandemic was unsettling. The politics, the pressures, the oversight, the governance, it wore people out. Coming back to the workforce takes time in terms of focusing work. The money can't solve that, but what we can do is work towards benefiting employees. Every employee, I didn't talk to a single employee today that didn't say how much they love North Idaho College. However, you will start to find as other colleges lose employees, and as baby boomers, and I said this earlier today in one of my presentations, I'm almost a baby boomer. I just miss it. But my generation and above, and I've still got 15 years of work because I've got a young child, but baby boomers will retire and faculty and staff will have the choice of where they work. Investments need to be made in staff and faculty retention that benefits students. So the budget looks good. I do think the enrollment part of the budget, and I'd have to dive into the Idaho model for dual enrollment and concurrent. I think that's a mistake to not see that grow as a leader into college attendance here. In terms of that idea of second choice versus first choice, make them cardinals now, they'll be cardinals then. And I think that's one area to increase to bring in not the revenue, but the revenue down the road. Get them connected to the college, the identity of college, so that you can deliver their educational endeavors later. The other part of that, budget-wise, I visit a lot of college campuses that are in disrepair. There are areas that you have beautiful facilities here that have been offset by incredible donations, and also, again, the taxes and the budget management. You've done an amazing job of keeping this college campus up to date. This new health sciences building that I just looked at, some of the other buildings that have been remodeled, the student union, they're actually in better shape than a lot of colleges in America. And so you've done a good job of planning ahead. The other part of that, though, I do have to say is, no matter how much you think you're planning ahead, the expenses are more. We just built a campus in Moab, Utah. When we started, it was $21 million. When we finished and completed the project in April, it was $28 million. And certainly that's pandemic supply chain issues. But that kind of planning, I mean, that's almost a third more than what we plan to build that building. Yeah. So expenses for college and state projects will just keep going up. So we need to plan for that. I do have to say, I don't think retaining staff with finances is all about paying more money all the time either. We have to be wise stewards with financial situations. So if I have an IT person that can make 6 figures somewhere else, I don't think the best practice is to match that for someone who makes $60,000 at the college. It may actually be the best move for them to go to a 6-figure job. But there are things about working for a college or a university that are beneficial. We need to also make sure employees understand that. Sometimes the benefits around that.
Thank you.
Could I have a moment?
You get the next question, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, I will. Good faith trying to do this.
You know, the problem is your gaps make me think, and then I talk, and then Greg needs to write more down, Greg. So I'm going to say one thing, I hope it doesn't. This is also our students, the young workers. I say students, I want to say the young workers, the 30 and under. Money is not always the motivation that we think it is for the older generation. It's purpose and place. They have to, this is unique here because of the cost of living, but it's a purpose and an alignment with the college.
David, I'm ask a very quick question. Our average age here is around 26-ish. What do you find at Utah State average age?
That's great. It's a really important question. When I got there, we were 29. Let me separate Utah State as a whole and you.
Oh, I'm sorry. What he was talking about, I thought this was germane for right now.
I brought mine down a long ways. I was 29 when I got there. I'm 24 now. By retaining and recruiting young students, which you guys do already.
Your actual average student age is less than ours.
And I'm a 4-year institution with graduate degrees.
I know about your college. I was at
Yeah.
Academy, so
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When I was there. Like,
No, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
we're gonna miss dinner. I'm not gonna talk about football. So,
Yeah.
There's no dinner, so luckily then there's no dinner reservations to miss. So,
Whenever you're ready, Greg.
Actually, I will say this while he's doing that. Sir, you saw our baseball team, we just made the regional.
I did see
lost
that.
to Texas. I played baseball there, so I was watching Coach Kaz and the boys real close.
Yeah.
This season.
Oh yeah. I looked at the athletics here. You had some pretty impressive athletics. You used to compete with Salt Lake Community College, and yeah.
Yeah, SWAC was a good league.
Yeah.
Okay, number 7.
Yes.
Okay. Describe your fundraising experience. What will be your approach to building a successful donor relationships in your region?
So my approach and strategy will change when I come here, and I want to explain why. I am the fundraiser in my region. You guys have a machine. You have professionals, and that's really important. And what I mean by that is it becomes a 1-2 punch with what looks to be, from my conversations today, highly qualified people that are good. The foundation here, I've been impressed with. And you also have professional staff that are very good at it. So in my region, I do both the fundraising, the communicating, the connecting donors with purposes and plans, whether that be the hospital to fund my nursing program, whether it be the school district to fund scholarships for teachers. That's my job, is to go out and meet those needs, articulate that, and make the ask. I then hand off to Utah State as a whole to my advancement team, who gets the documents prepared for me to sign, the president to sign. That's a mistake in my region. Not that I can't do that work, but the role of a president is to work with not only donors, but the community to find those people's passions that align, and then turn it over. I also will tell you, as good as I don't even know if I'm good, as much as I've done, it could be that I'm bad and I've missed out on a lot of money. However, as good as I am, professional fundraisers know how to ask. I know how to ask what I need. They know how to ask what someone wants to give. And there's a delta, a difference between those two numbers, because I often underestimate how much someone wants to give to a university. I'm a very conservative kind of financial guy. My own life, the way I manage. I'm also conservative in my ask of other people. And sometimes that brings me in under what they really wanted to give. So my strategy would change in that I would come here and be that articulation of what we do and working with the community to find those people who want to give, but also working with the foundation closely. Again, when I saw the Parker building and other buildings that have been foundation built with state money and also contributions, you do a great job. I don't mind and don't dislike the process, because outside of the money, I think it merges into what are the industry needs. Talking to donors also tells you what the future looks like in terms of workforce development, in terms of culture around the college. So it's a process that's bigger than just finances. But I want to use the professionals to also support that role.
2 seconds.
Okay, let's take that one step further.
Yeah.
What successes have you had in lobbying with regional, state, and national politicians? How will you employ these strategies at North Idaho College?
You know, as I read this just moments ago, as you were getting ready to read it, I got to the local, state, and national, and that, you know, the phrase of state versus federal, the balance point between things. In my region, I have to tiptoe between the state and my local legislative people who are very passionate about what I do. But I actually compete with my own institution. So Utah State is the land grant institution for the entire state. I care about a region of Utah State, which is Eastern Utah. I have donors in my region. One of them, the Bingham family, gave $18 million to build my building in Vernal. It's on 200 acres. We got the land donated as well. That's a big fish for a large university, 18 million and some. They actually, and I know this is a public, so I don't mind saying this because it's an open thing, but their son-in-law works for me as my director of facilities and IT management. In fact, I went elk hunting at their cabin this last fall. I have to be very careful, though, to balance my ask with what the university wants. That's a challenge when it comes to my system. North Idaho, it's a little different. It's a one institution ship. I won't be competing with myself. Where I do have to be very careful, but I've navigated this well. So I have a state senator in my region and a state representative. I also have a national senator in my region. There are things that those legislative representatives know I need and want, and I need to get on the docket for the next legislative session. But I also have to work through a system to make sure it's not counterproductive to something for the university. So that takes a lot of conversations, both with the elected officials and also with the governance of the university. And that's critical, because we can't be also giving mixed messages. I can't have one person. An equivalency here might be an academic ask from the legislature, and also, and this wouldn't overlap as much, but a foundation ask. So what I have been very good at getting, when I got there in Vernal, I had 24 faculty members, and now at 29. At a time when the state already told us they wouldn't fund new faculty members, but by proving models, by getting private donors to fund my faculty positions, I've then proven that I can get the enrollment and the workforce, and the state has been funding my position. I think it was after the last interview we had, I just got another late legislative fund for another nursing faculty that I need to search for now, that I've been asking for 3 years. So there's also grants in the state of Utah, there's grants in the state of Idaho through the governor's office, through different groups to fund permanent. We have a thing called workforce initiatives or strategic workforce grants. They can fund permanently new dollars into faculty. However, for faculty growth, I find my best source is not state funded, it's industry, who are committed to a program. And it's actually the model that higher ed needs to adopt more, because state funding will become more and more challenging to get. So I don't mind, I'm funded directly from the legislature. My campus is part of Utah State, but in 1967 was set up as a separate entity. So I have accountability for that to the legislature. That's how it's important to me to be somewhat unique, respecting the state oversight and the state interest, but advocating for the local economy and the local region is my role. Yeah.
Thank you.
By the way, I know I'm doing this again, but one of the problems that I see in Utah higher ed, and I won't even speculate that it exists in Idaho, we're merging a lot of things for efficiency, HR, other things, technical umbrella, underneath the USHE higher ed umbrella, all in the sake of efficiency. We're also then blurring the lines of what legislators know about each institution. That actually hurts our legislative process. Each institution needs to be very clear of what you do well and what the legislators know. There are elected officials in Utah with full-time jobs. They don't have the time to spend to research. I may only get 10 minutes with one of them. The more we blur the lines between institutions, the harder it becomes to get them to see which institution needs funding. It's almost like they just want to fund the whole system.
I'm just wondering, how long ago did you start merging those things?
In Utah?
Yeah.
So we had Noel Levitz, a consulting group, give us a report about 3 years ago. That was the catalyst for this merger. I'll tell you, the merger started politically long before that. I mean, that's the public-facing part, but people have been talking about. So 3 years ago, we merged the technical colleges under the higher ed system. I actually think that's a disservice to the technical colleges. It doesn't benefit them. It actually blurs what their purpose is sometimes.
Todd, you're still writing. When you're done, you have question 9.
All right. I do have questions when we're done, that's for sure. Tell us your vision for managing change and innovation. What would be your strategy for ensuring that NIC remain the leader and first choice for education in the region? And you may have kind of touched on this in a couple.
I don't mind answering again. 2 thoughts come to mind as you read it. One's outside of higher ed. As you know from my CV or may have heard, I used to climb around the world. South America, Europe, Central America, Asia. Expedition type climbing. I did a lot of rock climbing too back when I was younger. But it's where I learned how to do certain things. One of them is lead a team. Military is very similar too. I mean, you're all in. You got to learn to work together. So on an expedition, one of the things you also have to learn is to predict what's coming. I have to watch storms, especially when it gets closer to summit day. If I'm at 22,000 feet and I don't know what tomorrow's weather is going to be, not from what's on the weather app, which, by the way, when I was guiding, we didn't have a weather app. We had a satellite phone that would last 2 minutes, during the geosynchronous orbit, and that was just enough time to make someone scared because you'd start the conversation, then boom, it's gone. You have to watch the weather predict. In higher ed, change management isn't responding to change. For me, it's predicting what's coming and changing in advance so that we're ready and prepared for it. So looking at student needs today, student demographics, looking at the economy of the region, are we prepared for 10 years from now, not how do we prepare now? Pandemics are unique. We don't see those coming, although perhaps. But things like that are a little bit unique, and the change management has to be how do we respond as a group. Back to my search and rescue days, one of the things that happens with change management is it unsettles people. The norming, forming, storming kind of model. Unsettledness also hurts productivity. One of the things a leader needs to do is be an incident commander, be able to calm and settle during the time of change. Having done search and rescue, avalanche and mostly high angle rock, it's usually trauma. Very few avalanche survivors when by the time we get called, they're victims and it's recovery. Rock's a little different. Recovering someone with a broken femur, someone's got to calm the situation down. A leader at a college, change management, suddenly someone has something they've done for 20 years. We're going to change that role to meet something 2 years from now might unsettle them. But that's the role of a president or the president's team to be able to articulate, we're preparing you for success in the future, not changing what you do. And so change management is a little bit of that idea of looking ahead so that we're not in a condensed time frame. I mean, I don't want to reference back, but the more you condense a time frame, the more challenging a process becomes. I'm not setting something up there. I just want to.
No problem. I think I heard those words earlier.
So change management is in predicting in advance. The other part is a leader has to not shy away from change. A leader has to be okay with that kind of unsettled nature. I will say this, I still remember one time guiding on a large mountain, in fact, Aconcagua in Argentina. And the assistant guide, this is roped up crossing glaciers, massive storm coming in. We're on our way down from 22,000 feet, not extremely high, but high enough to kill you. And a storm was coming in that we were not going to beat. And I remember, it's much like the parent driving a car that almost gets hit and the spouse or partner says to someone, are we okay? The driver might be like, oh my goodness, we just about died. But the answer is, we're fine. Guiding to say, I still remember this assistant guide, Matt, asking me, are we gonna be okay? The answer was, in my head, I thought, we're gonna be okay if we keep moving. We're not gonna be okay if we talk about this. Let's just, yes, we're fine. Being that change manager in a crisis is really an important part for college presidents. The pandemic may have looked like a big crisis. There are other crises coming in higher education that are political, that are federal, they are governance related, they're accreditation related, they're financial. You need a president who can keep the team, and I'm not saying tell the team what to do, I'm actually saying leverage the team's expertise. Leverage the team, they all have, especially here, by the way, the team I met with for lunch, extreme experience. Leverage that, but provide the stable leadership so we can get this done.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question.
You ready, Ray?
No.
We promised you 90 minutes for your interview, and we took away a half hour of that today. So we will certainly go till 5:30 today.
I'll leave that up to you. I'm happy with our conversation. I mean, I want to answer the final question and any follow-up that you want to have, so I'm willing to spend as much time as you want, but don't feel like you owe me the time as well. I think
I'm enjoying this.
me too, so.
I'm trying to set some parameters.
Yeah, thank you.
know, to
Appreciate it.
also.
Yeah.
And then also for questioning people.
Sure.
We have a limited amount of time.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
I don't think we
Well, that's smart, Alec, but not worrying enough about you having to run back to your hotel and freshen up for dinner, so.
Thanks, yeah.
We've taken that pressure off.
Yeah, that's right.
Drinks at the hotel bar or something, maybe.
One more question, actually.
I'm usually a pretty quick mover in life and also leadership. I have to say, it's kind of nice to have a break. I should build this into my day, in my meetings. Okay, break again. Just think. It's like a being present. Yeah, it's kind of a nice feel. My kids would tell you I need to do that more often.
will definitely try to finish up at 5:30.
So you are trying to squash my question.
Are you ready? You're the one holding things up.
I'm not the one forcing it to end. Number 10, based on your research of North Idaho College, please tell us your impressions of the college, including your most positive impressions and those you'd like to address within the 90 days.
Thanks. I think, again, I mentioned this in the first interview, the semifinalist round. I didn't apply early. I mean, I saw the advertisement. I watch the job market in higher ed for a professional purpose, not for a career change opportunity. I like to know what the market holds for those who work for me. So I also like to know what opportunities, where things are changing around the nation. When I saw this, I didn't apply, and it wasn't, no one recruited me, no one called me, but there was I'm aware. I watched the Intermountain West. I'm from the Intermountain West. I love the Intermountain West. I have no desire to live anywhere else outside the Intermountain West, other than I lived in Chamonix, France. So, I enjoyed living in the Alps. I enjoy traveling. So any college, and I also am not looking to move to any university. I love Utah State, but my career goals don't take me to the next step at a university. In Utah State, perhaps, but not leaving Utah State, but a college like North Idaho. So I sat with it for a long time. Once I made the decision, it was rather close to whatever the deadline was. That's when I started really doing my research. What was fascinating to me was that I had a gut feeling, but as I did research, found out that gut feeling was correct. I was a semifinalist for Snow College in Utah many, many years ago, 6 years ago. That president just left again. He's been there for 4 years, I think, headed to Bayron at the American University in Bayron. That opens up a job at Snow. I'm not interested because I'm happy where I am. This job was interesting because there are things that Snow College is evolving away from that I've just mentioned earlier in our interview questions about the purpose of a community college that you have. So the more I uncovered, the more this lines up with the very thing I like about this college. I was not expecting the campus to be bad, but I wasn't expecting the campus to be so well prepared for a community experience for students. I wasn't expecting the staff to be unprofessional or unskilled. I expected that. They would match up against any institution where I've worked before. Professional, committed. I've met many that came back twice, have come back twice, have been asked to come back in an interim role. That shows they're committed to the college. I also have met multiple faculty and staff today who came from another institution. That shows that this secret sauce about North Idaho College isn't just my perception. People value it. And why they value it isn't just the location, which is beautiful. It's the history. 90 years of meeting this community college needs in this region. I do want to say, when I was in Leadville, my office looked out across from the Mosquito Range, where I had 200 acres, at the highest peak in Colorado, Mount Elbert. I thought when I left that job and came to Utah State, I would never have a more beautiful campus setting. It's outstanding. We groomed cross-country ski trails on our campus. And last night, my wife and I jogged down the river and then down through the lake and then came through the campus. I said to my wife, I don't even know if Leadville holds a candle to the lake in the evening, and I'm sure the mornings. It's an incredible place, but that's not your secret sauce. I mean, that is certainly critical to the student experience, is the dedication of over almost a century of people putting their blood and sweat and tears into this college. That exists, and you feel it. You feel people care about North Idaho. I also was pleasantly surprised at the commitment towards the dual mission. Not saying academics are cheaper, we don't need the investment in equipment, but keeping that investment in technical and trades. That's a really important part. The idea that you have maintained that balance, certainly there's a balance to be found again, and there's a what's the vision for the future? But in my research of North Idaho College, every time, years ago I bought a piece of property. I've looked for years for a piece of property. And every time I decided to make the choice to buy not backed out, I just didn't pull the trigger. Then one day when I pulled the trigger on this piece of property, every step that could have been a problem fell into place. I'm not saying North Idaho doesn't have problems, by the way. There are things to be solved. But every time I did research, I found that the thing I was looking at aligned with what I would want in the college, in terms of faculty to student ratio, in terms of professional faculty, not just adjunct faculty, things that other colleges have merged into a high adjunct faculty teaching role instead of a professional full-time. There are things I will uncover that will then go, wow, that's a real issue we'll have to deal with. But I've been pleasantly surprised. Finances, student perception, student feedback, online reviews, budgets, relevance in the state system, it's not lacking. I do think, even technologically, going with Ken today this morning, the CIO, around the campus, even on par with things like threats against ransomware, threats against cyber. Those are things colleges are facing every day. At least there's been conversations and thoughts and work towards protecting the college. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the size of the institution for what you do, and not bloated, not overspending for the delivery of the economic package. There are universities that have a similar enrollment and 4 times the budget. So yeah, I've been impressed with North Idaho College. I have nothing but positive impressions the first 90 days. Because of the nature of your first question of healing, not pointing at the Board of Trustees, but pointing at the changing leadership, vacancies, and there's healing comes over time. I also think you can't walk in and be, all is good, I'm here now. You have to walk in and say, we have to come together. And that allows people to grieve a change. North Idaho is changing for various reasons. The pandemic changed it. That alone is something that needs to be healed from. And so my first 90 days may be a little less accelerated than I would at a different institution at a different time. Instead of coming in with my vision, I want to come up with our vision. And that's many people involved in that process. That's a standard HR answer, by the way. What would you do? I'd listen, I'd talk to people. I really mean it. There's too much here to uncover. I don't want to mess with the secret sauce till I fully understand what that sauce is.
Thank you. Question 11 actually says, what questions can we answer for you?
So what I'd like to do with that question is defer. I know there are questions. I'm happy to answer yours. I mean, I could ask questions, but frankly, I think you probably have more pressing time than I need.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're ready for trustee questions, and I'll recognize people that raise their hand. Who's first?
Okay. Since they're trying to squash our questions time and not get any questions, then I'll go quick. In the 1030 open forum regarding your leadership style, you mentioned ability to leverage people. How will you go about leveraging people when they're trying to destroy you as president because you do not give them exactly what they want, like placement on board agendas, a raise, or you're opposing political faction that they oppose? Because of that, what is it you have to deal with as president? Are you prepared to handle that? You said you watched our board meetings.
I do. I've watched, I wouldn't say the whole entire last year, but I've watched most of the last year. But what I want to take out of that question is maybe a summary that I'm going to summarize that down. How would I leverage people? I'd get to know them. How would I gain the ability to work with people? Is I would actually take who they are and in their role, work with their supervisor. I mean, I don't supervise the whole college. I supervise a small team that supervises, but I want to find out what people have and what their dreams and passions are related to higher education. I don't need to know their whole life. I don't need to get involved, but I want to find out who they are because I think people are underutilized, underleveraged. Leverage sounds like a manipulative word, but I'm going to stick with it since I used it earlier at 10:30. The only way you do that is to find out what they need and want.
You know, what I'm hearing is kind of turn them back to the mission instead of politics.
That's right. 100%.
Todd, did you have a question you'd like to ask next?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I have a few. I don't think they're going to take that long, but I think they're probing questions. I think they're important. I'm not even sure which one to start, but I'll start with the whole enrollment thing. One of the things that the statistics seem to show is that, since we talked about athletics earlier, the athletics have a tendency to help with enrollment. And I don't know if you've had a chance to review our programs here or where we're at. You mentioned previously playing against Snow, and of course that'd be Salt Lake,
Sure.
and CSI, we're in the SWAC. And there's been some discussion on the campus. Do you have any thoughts about, for us, when I look at Utah State and USAFA, they both want to play national schedules, and we academy, we play everybody, we'll go anywhere. What do you think about that for us here, athletics, to try to help boost enrollment, you know, from the stance of the conference and the sports that we're going to offer and that sort of thing? You have thoughts on that? Because we used to fill the gym, but we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, and this is going to sound, well, it'll sound clear. I would say when I've looked at colleges and universities, no, I'll dismiss universities, colleges. Athletics is not an easy answer. You can't say colleges shouldn't have athletics, it's too expensive, it eats up the budget, too many scholarships, housing. You can't, you have to look at the specific college. There are colleges that should give up their athletics. It's either by their performance or by who they attract, it's not helping their enrollment. At this institution, my perception from my limited review of athletics here, it's part of the identity. I do think they're expensive. I don't think the return is directly measurable in terms of today's dollars. I think removing any sort of athletics, you have to be strategic. I brought on athletics at Colorado Mountain College. So we looked at 10,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains where the Leadville 100 is. We didn't have a cross-country team. So we developed a cross-country team. That's part of the identity of Leadville today. It was a mining town, now it's a recreation town. So I don't think you can always look at athletics from a financial filter and say yes or no. You have to look at it from the identity of the college and the region. So I don't have enough information to tell you which programs shouldn't be here. I will tell you I've been impressed. And as somebody who got kicked off the high school basketball team before I even got my sweats off as a junior, I have many friends that played at junior colleges or colleges who actually are very loyal to those colleges, and they're quite successful today in their careers and give back to that college.
Quick follow-up, if I may, on the sports. There's two things.
Yeah.
Would be your preference for those sports that choose to try to play at the highest level? And then having said that, because we have both male and female sports here and everything,
Yep.
in Idaho, we have a law. I don't know what you guys have in Utah.
Similar.
We've been very fortunate so far. We haven't had an issue with the transgender here. Have you had to deal with that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
So it's been huge in the Utah legislature throughout the course of this legislative session. So far at the college level, it's more of a high school sports issue in Utah than a college, and since it's not an issue I've dealt with, I don't have a playbook of how to navigate that political landscape. I do think sports are also where you see the most, what I'll use is passionate people around a college or a university, and especially at a Utah State or University of Utah in the Pac-12. It's where your largest donors are and your most passionate people about the mission of the institution. Eliminating sports sometimes eliminates both. I'm not saying here, I am saying sometimes that's beneficial to an institution struggling. I don't believe that's the case here.
Do you have an opinion on women's wrestling?
Is there one more on that subject, or? Why
Well,
don't we go ahead with,
I have a couple more questions around other subjects, if I may, so go ahead.
John, why don't you go ahead, and I'm trying to work your way around so everybody gets a chance.
Thank you,
John?
Mr. Chairman. You spoke briefly about full-time versus adjutant staff.
Yeah.
How does tenure fit into your model?
So when we talk about retention of staff and faculty in an ever-changing climate, I do believe that recognition, especially of faculty, John, is an important process for longevity of faculty at an institution. Tenure is a little bit, it's not nebulous, but it's defined by the institution, the measures of tenure. So in a teaching academic instruction, that should be very different than Utah State as a research institution. Someone might gain tenure by only teaching one class a year at Utah State because their research is how they gain tenure. My father's an MD, and he's a tenured faculty member at the University of Utah where he works. He's never done a single day of teaching in his life. Tenure is unique at each institution, but that's within the medical school at the University of Utah. I do believe that tenure, even at a community college, and I don't mean that as a negative, is an important part of retention. And when we talked earlier, John, about the changing landscape of where people will be able to leave and go elsewhere, the more we can provide steps that root them and deepen their roots within the college, it's helpful. Tenure, even at my institution, does not mean fully freeing them from oversight. Tenure, even at Utah State, does not mean that my faculty can do anything they want. Tenure means that they have a position. It means that they can't do unethical, illegal, immoral things and maintain their employment at Utah State. It's not a free kind of open gate to do whatever you want. So I have no problem with the tenure process. In fact, I actually believe in the tenure process, and I also believe in the faculty advancement process. I think faculty need to have goals just like everyone else. They need to work through a defined process to become retained faculty. So, John, I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Before you go with another question, Pete brought to mind that I erred when I took the time at 5:30. We started at 4:15, so we have till 5:45. So we will continue questioning till 5:45. Pete, did you have a question?
I did, and I may have wrote down the wrong college, but it said, I believe it's Snow College, they were removing technical trade programs.
So not intentionally removing, they have a campus 30 miles away in Richfield, Utah. It's the technical and trade campus. I don't believe I said they're removing that there, but they are, all of the colleges in Utah, as we merge into the system of governance of one system, it's very easy to see the attraction of academic programs. It's a little bit distracting. It's a red herring. That's not the only value of a college. Even at a university, Utah State has an aviation program. I have numbers of trades. Even in the southeast corner of Utah, Moab, Landing, Monument Valley, we are the technical college for the state of Utah. I guess if I said something similar, but I don't know that I said they were removing, but I may have, but they are not seeing that as their main identity and their purpose.
I think that's what you said. Right?
And that's actually from my position, a mistake. And one of the reasons why is I just, the idea, I had a goal to get a doctorate degree when I was a child. It might have been a goal for someone to be in the military. It might have been a goal to be an MD. That wasn't a career move. That was a goal because my family culture. It turns out it was a good move in other ways as well, right? I mean, it's something that motivated me and kept me moving forward. The goal of a degree is less important than the outcome of that degree for students. So career and technical education leading to careers that are high paying, or where students have the ability to transition in their career, that's essentially more important to our students, to the younger students, than actually the degree itself. I don't think we've lost the attraction of bachelor's degrees, associate degrees, graduate degrees, and we have to actually do a better job of messaging the value. I wrote an op-ed just in the paper a week ago about what do my graduates make compared to those who didn't come to Utah State, to show that value economically. But the real article is, what is the value to their lifestyle? What is the value to their ability to withstand a change in job status or a family divorce? What does that help? The fact is diabetes is lower, obesity is lower in college graduates. There's a number of things we could message, but we also have to message the value of technical education. It's critical to not entry-level workforce, it's critical to high-paying workforce. One of the programs in our technical colleges in Utah is injection molding and carbon fiber. Those graduates are making $120,000. The millwrights, Betty Becker, she was telling me that those millwrights are making $80K a year coming out of that program. That stacks up against any teacher in the K through 12 system in Utah. I don't know about Idaho, but I don't think they're paying $80K to come out of a teacher college. So yeah, I don't know I don't think you can leave that behind, the career and technical education.
Greg, your turn again.
Well, can I just say, I also think we have to redefine what career and technical education means. Sometimes we mix those terms with some programs that are career and technical and think they're academic. Sorry.
This morning you spoke about vocal, passionate groups, so the people that are heard on campus. I watched it in open session.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. You even said, I'll quote you, that they have been silent for a period of time, even a decade. So what does the college look like for a broader audience that maybe are not engaged necessarily with the community. I like how you're trying to draw out and even boost enrollment like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, how would you go about doing that?
I'm going to use a non-academic example because I think it'll provide clarity. So in the Uinta Basin in eastern Utah, where oil and gas is economically misperceived as the most important economics of the region, it just happens to be the most prominent. So federal workers, BLM Park Service from the National Monuments, recreation, river running, those are actually huge. But you know what's bigger? K through 12 education is massive, teaching the children that region. So when we identify groups over the long period of a time who are supporters of, let's say, a community or a college, over time we actually silence groups that may be not just a minority, they may be a majority. They may be sitting out there, but they've never been engaged with from the college perspective to find out what they would want in a college experience, not even for students, but for the community. And it's a challenge to get them to speak because they don't believe that we want to hear. I'll tell you the two big groups that, for me, really came out as I started listening to the groups in the Uinta Basin. So the oil and gas workers are critical. In fact, the infrastructure of the communities are heavily benefited from mineral lease money. I mean, it's beautiful libraries, beautiful recreation centers, great K through 12 schools. Booming times have paid off big dividends. But there are people who live there because they can afford to live. There's nowhere for them to live on the Wasatch Front. So they're choosing to live, and even Heber City, which is, an hour from Salt Lake, it's too expensive. There's nowhere within an hour and a half. So they're moving to a place like the Uinta Basin, not Moab, because you can't afford to live in Moab either. But some of these regions, what they want are certain things that they've been there for a decade. There's a retirement community, much like St. George, Utah had in the 1980s, in eastern Utah. Climate tends to be pretty good. Are we talking to them? What is it you need from a college experience? They're your donors. They also happen to be either grandparents or aunts and uncles of potential students. That's a group that's silent. So when you talk about leveraging that for enrollment, the reason people might see a college, and I don't mean North Idaho, but anything in a setting like this, as a second choice, is because someone in their family didn't tell them, go look at North Idaho College.
Well, I think you definitely tapped into something here where you got a long time people who've been involved with the foundation for years think they got more rights just because the new trustees who've only been involved for 2 years. It's kind of speaking directly to our situation.
Todd, it's your turn. Do you have a question?
Well, actually, I do. I have a couple, three, so I'm trying to decide. I don't know how much time we're gonna have. I'm gonna go with this one. This is gonna be kind of a multi-part question. It's about faculty and retention and economics of pay, and it kind of encompasses about 3 different questions. And so let me give you the question that's gonna take me a second. But one of the issues that's come up is the proper percentage, maybe during the pandemic, of online versus in-person versus hybrid instruction. What is gonna be the mode of delivery? In the same vein, then, what is your percentage of full-time versus part-time / adjunct, and what do you do for parity with them? One of the things I've always fought for is that full-time gets a raise, the part-time adjunct does. But in the same vein, then, you have some issues with CTE, STEM, nursing, some of those, and maybe the need for a pay differential because you can't get instructors in those because you're competing against industry. So I'm looking at one group of folks where I may need to pay more, and that's not something we've been able to do here, so I'm curious your thoughts about that. And then how we balance that with full-time versus the part-time in general, whether it's CTE or academic transfer. And then as we look at the mix of delivery, obviously the CTE is going to have to be more in person, but what have you seen or what's your feel on the percentages? And one of the areas there that I'm kind of curious is, I think we need to pay someone more personally when they're in person, in class instructing versus cut and paste on an online class. I've seen some of that and they just kind of updated it. My wife took one of those and she was finding half the mistakes because she was one of the first person that would actually look when the instructor said stuff, and it looked like it was from the prior semester or the prior year. She mentioned it to him, and he'd make a couple quick corrections. And he was probably at home in his jammies and slippers. So I don't know. I think there's more value when you're standing up in front of the classroom and you're having to go at it, and you're dressed up professionally and you're doing your thing there versus at home with your cup of coffee.
So go ahead. I'm
done. So those are kind of it's a kind of a 3-part.
Yeah.
It's how we're using our faculty how we're compensating our faculty and how we're treating our faculty.
Honestly, that could have been the 90-minute interview, that question, right? There's a lot there. And I wish, and hopefully someday we can talk further about all of those, but I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version. But
You're gonna have to.
yeah, and if I get time, I want to come back to the online teaching. Because I don't disagree, but I also think there's a perception that's inaccurate also about the high quality online faculty members. I actually am predominantly full-time faculty. I only have 8 adjuncts that teach for me in Vernal. I have 5 adjuncts in Roosevelt. As I get down into southern Utah, southeastern, my adjunct percentage goes up, but I'm still probably 85% full-time faculty. But I also have pretty good funding for those positions. I actually believe that one of the mistakes that we make in higher education is where budgets get tight, pushing to adjuncts and pulling away from faculty. It's a tempting move to save benefits. It actually also the outcome is students don't get a consistency.
Did you say that again? Budgets get tight when you move
So
to
when budgets get tight, let's take away full-time faculty and hire 5 adjuncts without benefits.
Okay.
That's a savings, but at a cost.
Yeah.
From the student perspective.
Okay.
But I don't want that to be perceived that I don't believe in adjuncts. I've actually been an adjunct for most of my career for different universities because I like the experience.
They notice like consulting experience.
Oh yeah, I love, because that's how I learn new skills.
On the papers.
I like discovering. So your second part about what do we do for adjuncts when we benefit a full-time employee? You and I might disagree on that, but that doesn't mean that I'm right. I do think adjuncts should look at the job as not a career, but serve us to give back. That's how I look at my adjunct role. I have a full-time job. If I choose to teach for Arizona State in a program, they have a rate, and I accept that rate and I teach for that rate. That doesn't mean that the problem doesn't exist, and you are right on. Adjuncts, over a long period of time, your best adjuncts stay static. So that's where I actually agree with you. It doesn't mean that I think every time you benefit full-time faculty, you should benefit adjuncts, but we should be looking at the adjunct pay from my view, and you and I can not disagree, but we could look into that. We ought to look at what are the triggers that prompt a review of adjunct pay, because too often they get stuck 10 years old in terms of the pay rate, and then you might actually be losing. The last part I gotta come back to is nursing is the one that came to mind when you were talking about how do we get someone who's at a pay rate that we can't compete with the industry.
Because STEM and challenge.
No question.
Well,
Does any of your campuses introduce that? Or?
So my Huntsman School of Business, I pay my faculty more than I do every other department. I don't do that, the department does. The reason why is I can't get someone to teach for the Huntsman School who's a CPA for $65,000 a year. They just won't do it, but I need that person to teach for me. We actually charge the students in that program a differential in tuition that covers the cost to pay for that faculty that way. So it's directly not it's not hurting the general students in other programs. The students getting that high quality program are also paying for a better program. Well, a more reputable program.
Did that come about in your tenure? Or?
No, that was prior to my time with the differential tuition. The sad part about that is I will say it doesn't always come back to the students in the program. Anytime you charge differential tuition, fees, it's challenging to track and make sure they get to where they should. I actually strongly believe in a pretty clean tuition fee model. We just don't do that in higher ed. It evolves. The last part is, can I just say about online instruction? Utah, through an April special session of the legislature 2 years ago, because of the pandemic, forced us to go to a 75% face-to-face instruction, to force back into the classroom. I agree with you. I love teaching in the classroom. I actually teach a live class via Zoom. I teach one class a year in my faculty role, every spring. But I teach around the state, but my students are with me. Like I'm literally talking to them. I have 10 in my classroom, and I have 10 all over the state in different rooms. I like that, and I like the model, and my students tend to enjoy it because there's a little more give and take. I also firmly believe that the best online instructors, and I'll say this myself, I get rated in the top 2% of online instruction, are not the ones who cut and paste. They're the ones who take the same commitment to face-to-face instruction to the classroom, not copy and paste, move things over, although I've even been caught with a bad date from a previous semester, and a student will call and say, hey, Dr. Taylor, I don't think that's Easter this weekend, I think that's next weekend. And you're like, Yep. So I do think the problem with online is there's an assumption. When I ran a private college, it asked for donations and investors into the college. One day, one of the trustees was promoting the college and said, online's cheaper, right, Dr. Taylor? I said, no, it's not brick and mortar, and you don't fix your costs, but the human cost goes up. If you do a good online program, you invest in the backside of that program to keep the faculty trained, moving, oversight, classroom visitation, and student support. So I don't think online's cheaper. I think it's more nimble to move from brick and mortar program to program.
You refer to the for-profit, is that the Ameritech College?
Yeah, it's actually just changed its name, by the way.
Thank you, John. You have another question.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do. And part of this came from a letter that came to our board suggesting that there were 3 areas to focus on, and I'm going to put in a 4th. There are 4 different communities involved in North Idaho College. First of all, students. Then you've got staff and faculty and then a board. They all need to be dealt with distinctly. Can you tell me how you would do that?
Yeah, and I do that currently. Of those groups, though, I look at a board. So let me review again just to make sure before I answer. Board, students, staff, and faculty. Is that the 4 you gave?
That's correct. Students first.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I have the right 4. You just said my answer. Students first. Everyone else should be able to hang on if they don't get my attention, but students can't. The students are the most important part, even as a president, not just as a student services team. Faculty, they're a unique group. They have distinct needs from time to time, and their perspective is much like a student perspective. Sometimes they get narrow in their focus and they don't see the big picture. Staff tend to see a bigger picture than sometimes faculty do because they work in a real world, and I don't mean that in a negative way about faculty, but it's challenging sometimes. I see faculty emails today, even at my current institution, that will say to a student, I'm off until August 15th. And no faculty should, I mean, I understand the contract issue, but if you're not available till August 15th, that's not a profession. So students first, John, and what I do with students is we talked about it today in the afternoon session. It's not being present, it's being available and approachable. Being present is one thing. Like I could be a college president, walk across the campus, fast with my phone to my ear, and no student's gonna talk to me. But if I go to an event with Alex from, not Nixa, but Asnick, thanks Todd. If I go to an event on a cruise on Lake Coeur d'Alene in shorts and a t-shirt, the next time I see that student on campus, they're more likely to talk to me. So interacting with students in informal ways is one of the best ways to hear the student perspective. Bringing them also into my input channels through the either Asnick, third time's the charm, or other sources, that's really important. The board has to be kept in the loop through transparent conversations, but I also hope that a board of trustees is mature enough in their setting to not need hand-holding, that we can work together to work as a team for the college, rather than constantly having to spend my time with the board. I want to spend that time with the faculty. And I'm not saying that about anything here. I'm saying that in general, as students are my most important. Staff second, faculty, and then the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pete, you have one more question. This is our last question.
It's not our last question. I have plenty of questions. Pete, go ahead, Pete.
The president cabinet model, what do you feel is the best model for a college? And you mentioned student mentoring. How about staff mentoring through that model?
So staff mentoring is a great idea. I'll take that back. I think one of the things that has to change here is you have an overwhelming burden in the current BoT model through both student services and academics. That's a challenge in today's world. Student services, go back to 1920. Faculty were student services. A faculty member in the traditional higher education setting helped students enroll in classes. They helped students make a selection of choices. They problem solve with students. As regulations, federal, have come into play, they've burdened us in higher education with constant oversight and staff. You know, there are many rules. now to have someone oversee academics and student services, I just don't think that's a realistic ask. Either one, you'll burn through that person, or two, the services that get to the end of the rows will be ineffective. So one of the things I think needs to change is a model that separates out. But I could, that's somewhat financial, that's somewhat strategic. That's also part of the staff mentoring. I also think, and I heard from today at lunch, one of the things the pandemic did at this college was show the capabilities of some, I won't say junior staff, but mid-level staff that stepped up. And sometimes a crisis teaches you, what people can do. So let's look at how we do that outside the crisis. What are people's capabilities? How do we develop them? That'll actually help, and that comes through mentoring.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of the crisis.
I would appreciate your coming here and joining with us.
You spoke to the,
And
David, you're being very rude right now. I have a job to do as a fiduciary. You spoke to the crisis.
I did.
And who made the decisions for the medical decisions at your campuses regarding masking and vaccines?
Dr. Wolf, what I'd like to do is, this is not my meeting, it's yours, but I'm going to say, if I come back, we'll have that conversation. And you'll have plenty of an
We're
opportunity.
not gonna have the.
Well, will you?
No, I'm in. Yeah, I see your point, Todd. Yeah, you'll have to make a
Well,
decision.
security is a big thing in today's world. One of the things I'd be curious to know is if you guys at Utah State have armed security or not.
Yeah.
Would you think they would carry guns on campus? Is that?
That's a challenge. Thank you so much.
Will you commit to answering written questions? I mean, they're stifling our questions.
I actually want, clearly, I'm invested in your process, but I also am invested in, you and I talked the integrity of the process. I do believe, the reason I stepped out was just to give fairness through the whole thing. What I'd like, I think you've gotten a good feel for me. You may end up having, as a board, follow-up questions with me through the board. And I'd like to follow those up, if you have them. You may actually have a better candidate, you won't need to even come back to me. So,
thank you very much.
I'm not trying to dismiss you, but trying to respect the process.
Our challenge is not with you, sir.
I understand.
Our challenge is with this.
They're putting you candidates
I'm
as
going to
fodder.
turn these questions back to you, by the way.
Well, thank
just so
you.
that they don't.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's-
It's been my pleasure, all of you. I appreciate your time. And can I ask a funny question that I should know?
Absolutely.
I walked out on purpose, and I don't care either way, but I couldn't catch on if the motion passed or not for dinner. And I'm good either way. I just need to know. In fact, Pete can tell me because you're driving me back to my hotel.
That
So,
was my point, since we don't have the opportunity to chat with you more later.
okay, I
I
heard
have the
that.
opportunity.
I heard that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, all of you.
So
Appreciate it.
Pete gets to converse with them after
And the
you're
meeting
driving.
is-
I don't mind walking back, by the way. I can jog down the road to get
Pete
back.
gets to
so.
converse with them, but we don't.
Thanks, all of you.
I like how Pete gets to talk to him after the meeting, and we don't.
Well, nice to meet you again. Thanks for being here today. It's a big investment of your time.
Our meeting is adjourned.
Cindy? I'm sorry, Christy. I know who you are.